He resolved to live for himself from now on, vowing never to attend school, college, university, or any form of formal education again. Yet, despite his firm decision, he now finds himself standing in front of Einrogard, the Empire's most prestigious magic academy. Accompanied by one of the escort knights who guided him here, he steps through its gates. The knight, Aurelong, is deeply moved. Once resigned to being a relic of the past, he now feels a renewed sense of purpose after assisting the young master. Watching him grow into a remarkable young man, worthy of Einrogard, has made Aurelong realize his own worth. Our boy, however, is gloomy. Despite his determination, he couldn't sever his ties to schooling, even in this life. Memories of his past life resurface. Graduating from university alongside his friend, who marveled at how they survived under relentless professors. Those professors drove them to exhaustion, sometimes forcing them to join weekly hiking clubs and other times assigning grueling tasks that kept them working through the night. For weeks, they subsisted on nothing but kimbap, barely scraping by. Our boy's friend once remarked that, while every graduate student goes through similar struggles, he believed our boy was truly exceptional. But our boy humbly felt he had simply done his best in his circumstances. His friend, however, jokingly suggested he should repeat grad school, insisting that our boy was perfectly suited to that life. To this, our boy replied that he had only done his part and didn't care how others perceived it. He made it clear he had no intention of returning to any place of learning, firmly resolved to live life on his own terms. After declaring this to his friend, our boy walked out of the school gates. However, as he was crossing the road, a speeding truck, whose brakes had failed, struck him with full force. His education and degree became nothing more than a futile memory. Yet even in the face of death, his resolve to avoid school remained unwavering. The scene shifts to another world, where our boy is reincarnated as a baby. However, our boy, now known as Leon Wardenaz in this world, retains all the memories of his previous life. Born as the third son of House Wardenaz, the Empire's foremost magical family, Leon initially believes it must all be a dream. The idea of being reincarnated as a noble, let alone the third son of a powerful and wealthy household, seems too far-fetched to be real. But when he realizes this might be a reward for enduring grad school in his previous life, he feels a flicker of happiness. Perhaps this is his chance to live an easier life. Unfortunately, his optimism is short-lived. Leon soon learns that House Wardenaz follows a strict rule. The first son inherits everything, while the rest of the children are left to forge their own paths. Accepting his reality, Leon decides to pursue swordsmanship, reasoning that it might prove useful in the future. He personally approaches Auralag to request training in the art of the sword. Besides, he figures, there's nothing better to do, and fortunately, the Wardenaz family generously supports any pursuit the younger children choose to explore. Auralag is thrilled and eagerly asks Leon if he plans to walk the path of the sword. However, Leon calmly replies that he intends to become a magician, as it seems like the most stable and practical path. Auralag is taken aback by the response, while Leon is momentarily startled, wondering if his answer sounded too unambitious. To his surprise, Auralag suddenly bursts into tears. Auralag explains that he is deeply moved by Leon's wisdom, marveling at how, unlike most children who are often blinded by youthful fantasies, Leon is already planning a practical and reasonable future. But Leon doesn't see it as anything extraordinary. He believes it's only natural to become a realist after enduring the hardships of grad school. Leon's decision to pursue magic stems from its versatility and high demand. A skilled magician is valued not only in the Order of Knights but also in the Adventurers Guild, the Imperial Family, and countless other prestigious institutions. And the Empire's greatest magic academy, Einrogard, stands as the pinnacle for training such talent. The scene shifts to Leon, who after reminiscing about his youth and previous life, our boy now finds himself standing in front of Einrogard Academy, resigned to enduring yet another school life for a few years. Aurelong tries to reassure Leon, telling him he will do well, especially since even the Patriarch acknowledged his talent. However, Leon merely thanks Aurelong for his hollow words. He finds it hard to believe, considering the Patriarch didn't even allow him to practice magic, claiming it was too dangerous for children. Aurelong then informs Lian that he cannot accompany him further, as neither attendants nor horses are allowed beyond this point. As Aurelong departs, our boy overhears someone shouting for others to make way, announcing the arrival of the Duke's daughter. However, some people stubbornly refuse to move, citing that the Imperial Prince is present with them. Lian, meanwhile, can't help but think there are far too many people and noble guards gathered here, considering Einrogard is supposed to be a place one enters alone. As these thoughts run through his mind, he notices someone standing behind him who doesn't appear to be feeling well. Our boy asks the man if he's okay, to which the man replies that he's not. He explains that he won't be able to function without his servants, describing them as his hands and feet. Lian responds that the man's complaint is quite logical, though inwardly he is disgusted by the noble's inability to handle even simple tasks. The man, however, doesn't stop there. He begins ranting about how the academy, under the guise of equality, has even started admitting slaves as students. Outraged, he declares that he'll file a formal complaint using his family's name and storms off toward one of the academy officials. Lian encourages him to go ahead, curious to see how the academy will handle such a situation. To Lian's shock, the academy official doesn't hesitate to use mind manipulation magic on the complainer, forcing him to repent for his behavior. Stunned, Lian realizes they have no qualms about employing such magic, even on noble children. It dawns on him that the rumors he'd heard about the academy being a place filled with monsters might actually be. Not to mention, there's the infamous rumor about the academy burying its attendees in the mountains if they die. As our boy is lost in thought, the academy gates suddenly creak open, releasing an eerie smoke and a sinister sound that engulfs the area. A voice booms out, calling the attendees stupid ironheads as part of their unsettling welcome. The atmosphere grows heavy with an overwhelming magical pressure, and Lian immediately realizes that it can only be the work of the academy's infamous headmaster. As the oppressive force settles over everyone, Lian notices the shocked expressions of the attendees around him, all equally shaken by the headmaster's sheer presence. The headmaster addresses them in a commanding tone, reminding them that they were instructed to enter alone. He warns that if they refuse to follow the rules, he will enforce them himself. The headmaster hurls all the extra people out of the academy grounds. He then orders the attendees to stop standing around like fools and start moving. As he speaks, a massive green skull materializes above the gate, its menacing voice repeatedly urging the terrified attendees to step into the academy. With this unnerving spectacle, Lian's first day at Einrogard, the Empire's greatest magic academy, begins. And already, he has a very bad feeling about what lies ahead. The scene shifts to the interior of Einrogard Academy, where students walk through the corridors, many looking dejected after being called Iron Heads despite being the successors of their respective lands. As our boy makes his way through the corridor, he is approached from behind by a girl who introduces herself as Yoker Makin, a member of the Makin house, another prominent family of magicians like the Wardenass. Lian turns toward her and bluntly asks what she wants. She replies that the Imperial Highness wishes to see him, which takes our boy by surprise. However, as he glances toward the Imperial Prince, who is acting uncharacteristically cheerful, Lian quickly realizes that the students are already fiercely vying to build connections on the first day. After all, Einrogard isn't just a place for development. It's also a hub for socialization and networking. As Lian observes the Imperial Prince, he thinks to himself that calling him Imperial Highness feels excessive. The Emperor has over 100 children, and, just like in the Wardenass family, only the firstborn truly matters in the imperial hierarchy. However, unlike the Wardenass family, the Emperor provides no support to his other children, making their lives even harder. In a place teeming with children of great houses, like Einrogard Academy, the imperial family's standing is often lower than even Yoker Maiken's house. Despite this, Lian can't understand why Yoker is acting so deferential toward the imperial prince. As our boy ponders this, he overhears some students mocking Yoker, finding it laughable that she would assist a no-name prince. However, Lian thinks that building alliances is better than creating enemies. Shaking hands with Yoker, he remarks that there's nothing wrong with making friends. Yoker gratefully thanks him, adding that he's the first person to accept her request. This revelation shocks Lian, who silently curses his fate. He finds himself, of all people, becoming friends with Gainando, the 97th Imperial Prince, or so Gainando claims, as there are rumors he might actually be the 101st Prince. Lian firmly resolves that he wants no part in dealing with triple-digit royalty. Yet, as he observes Gainando further, it becomes clear to him that the prince is remarkably immature. Gainando grows angry when one of the students rejects his proposal. Lian reassures him, suggesting that they simply don't realize how regal an existence Gainando has. However, Gainando doesn't understand what regal means, which makes Lian realize that not only is Gainando immature, but he is also an immature fool. Lian then explains that regal refers to someone of high, prestigious class, someone invaluable. Gainando is pleased by this explanation but remains visibly irritated that the students have refused his proposal and are now conversing with Aidenart. This, he finds humiliating, as he believes it undermines his status. Lian recalls that Aidenart is the 44th Imperial Princess, and she possesses the elegance expected of someone from the Imperial family. It's no surprise that people would flock to her, unlike Gainando. Gainando then requests that Lian take care of Aidenart, noting that he is tall and well-built. Our boy, however, calmly informs him that regal individuals do not harass others. Gainando quickly clarifies, saying he's not asking Lian to harass her, but to punish her instead. Lian responds firmly, stating that regal people don't entertain such thoughts either. Gainando, now visibly confused, asks Lian what he should do. Our boy responds that Gainando should forgive them. However, if Gainando doesn't want to do that, he could simply challenge them to a duel. Gainando is taken aback by this suggestion and tells Lian that, since he is a regal prince, he will forgive them, as there's no need to escalate things that far. Yoker, who had been watching from a distance, is impressed by Lian's ability to manage Gainando's stubbornness, something she, as Gainando's relative, had been unable to do. However, Lian is more concerned by the length Yoker is going to in order to care for Gainando. Curious, our boy asks Yoker why she is going so far for him. Just as Yoker is about to respond, the headmaster of Einrogard Academy appears before them and asks if they enjoyed their conversation, once again referring to them as Iron Heads. The students freeze in fear upon seeing the Lich, the same figure they saw at the gates, now standing before them. Lian is surprised to discover that the headmaster of the greatest magic academy is a Lich. A Lich is a being who willingly becomes undead in order to overcome death, typically the result of a great magician's desire for immortality. The headmaster then turns toward the students and asks them to consider why he has been calling them Ironheads for some time. Aidenart responds that it is because the symbol for this year's freshman is steel. The headmaster finds Aidenart's answer phenomenal and grants 10 points to her dorm, which amazes Aidenart, as she didn't know there was a point system for dorms. However, her excitement is short-lived when the headmaster informs her that she was mistaken. He tells Aidenart that she should have already known the answer because, if one wants to become a magician, they must first learn how to distinguish lies from the truth. The headmaster then clarifies that while the symbol for this year's freshman is indeed steel, the reason for this is that steel is a valuable material with a variety of uses. Its properties change depending on how it is crafted. The headmaster continues, stating that steel is indeed a material well-suited for this year's freshman, which amazes the students. However, he suddenly bursts into laughter and tells them they've fallen for his lies once again. He reveals that the reason their symbol is steel is because they have nothing in their heads. Lian is shocked as he watches the headmaster mock the students, including imperial princes and princesses, realizing that despite the headmaster's harsh words, no one dares to respond. Our boy understands the reason behind the students' inability to speak back. It's more than just difficult to move in an environment filled with such dense magical energy. However, Lian feels oddly at ease in this atmosphere, pondering whether it's because he has grown accustomed to it or if the headmaster has somehow adjusted it. The headmaster suddenly becomes more understanding, telling the students that he has been too harsh on them, considering the long journey they've made to get here. He then directs their attention to the door on their left. As the headmaster speaks, he notices that Lian is able to move freely despite the dense magical energy in the air. Everyone turns toward the door on their left, which opens to reveal a bright light, and they are greeted with the sight of food laid out on the tables. The headmaster invites everyone to enjoy the feast and to relieve themselves of the fatigue accumulated during their journeys. The students can hardly contain their excitement upon seeing the delicious spread before them, praying that this isn't just another one of the headmaster's jokes. The sight of white bread generously slathered with thick slices of cheese and butter, along with well-cooked chicken coated in oil, butter, spices, and flour, which had been boiled into a flavorful dish, makes their mouths water. There is also gratin covered in bechamel sauce and fresh fish grilled in the Eastern style over charcoal. Gainando, like the other students, becomes very excited upon seeing the various dishes. He grabs his knife and fork to devour the fish. However, as he begins eating, all of the food in front of him suddenly disappears. The headmaster laughs once more, finding it hard to believe that the students have fallen for his joke a third time. He tells them to pull themselves together. Leon, who is observing the entire scene, thinks to himself that the skeletal headmaster has clearly lost quite a few things, as he's heard that becoming a lich results in the loss of certain aspects of one's humanity. The headmaster then informs the students that this academy is a birthplace for magicians, and that the greatest driving force behind a developing magician is their thirst for knowledge. As he says this, he conjures large amounts of bread, rice cakes, and the students' shabby uniforms. The food provided is barely enough to fill one's stomach, and Gainando, outraged, feels the urge to protest, believing the headmaster has gone too far. However, this feeling is precisely what the headmaster intended. He tells the students that if they find the food unappetizing, they should learn magic to acquire better meals for themselves. Likewise, if they are dissatisfied with their shabby uniforms and wands, they should use magic to acquire new clothes and wands. These, he declares, are the very laws of the academy. After observing the restrictions, one of the students suggests that it is possible to obtain things by asking for them outside. The headmaster becomes excited upon hearing this response and informs them that freshmen are not allowed to leave the academy, nor are they permitted to ask senior students for such things. After explaining the rules, the headmaster wishes the students good luck, hoping they will grow into great magicians. Leon watches this entire scene in silence, reflecting on whether every place has its share of eccentric professors. If that's the case, he's well acquainted with such individuals. Before his reincarnation, the professor in his laboratory had the same gleam in his eyes filled with madness. As Leon is lost in these thoughts, Gainando approaches him to complain about how poorly they are being treated, citing the terrible food and clothes. Leon, however, counters that the headmaster is better than his old professor, as they are at least providing food. Leon points out that the headmaster is at least providing food and clothing, which surprises Gainando. Not even his servants would tolerate such provisions, making him wonder about the kind of life Leon must have lived. Assuming Leon comes from a poor background, Gainando invites him to visit his house someday. This unexpected offer surprises Leon, but he accepts graciously and suggests they head toward the dorms. Einrogard Academy prided itself on accepting students based solely on their talent, regardless of their status. However, to prevent disputes among its sensitive and competitive students, the dormitories were divided into 4 towers according to status. The first was the Tower of the Arrogant Blue Dragon, reserved exclusively for those of noble lineage. This tower housed students from renowned families, including members of the imperial family and individuals like Leon. The second was the Tower of the Eternally Burning Phoenix, which only admitted those devoted to the holy flame. This solemn and honest tower was home to priests from various religious orders. The third tower was the Tower of the Lightning-Rending White Tiger, where only those with the ferocity to strike down anything in their path were allowed entry. This tower housed bloodlines from the noble houses of knights, students prepared to walk dual paths as both knights and wizards. The last was the Tower of the Past and Future-Seeing Black Turtle, open only to those with endless patience. It welcomed individuals from various backgrounds: civilians, servants, slaves, clowns, beggars, and even emerging lower-class nobles. Compared to the other dorms, this tower and its residents were often overlooked due to their lower status. Most freshmen found it intimidating. However, to Leon's discerning eyes, they were ideal business partners. As the students from the Tower of the Black Turtle gathered to discuss matters among themselves, they noticed Lian watching them closely. Though unsure of his motives, they could tell he wasn't looking down on them. Meanwhile, Lian himself contemplated his plans, observing them with interest and intent. On the other hand, Lian was strategizing about how to befriend the students of the Fourth Tower. Our boy realized that the best way to earn money was through business, and excelling at it required field experience, something he could gain from the merchants of the Fourth Tower. However, as he pondered this, he overheard someone remark that it was unnecessary to accept such lowly people as the students of the Fourth Tower, no matter how one looked at it. The room fell silent as everyone turned to stare at the brown-haired boy who had made the insulting comment. Arrogantly, he defended himself, asking if he had said anything wrong. But Lian couldn't tolerate such blatant disrespect toward his potential business partners. Calmly but firmly, our boy responded, "The only lowlife in this academy is you. Everyone here has set aside everything they had before coming to this place, and that is something you should never forget." His words resonated with the students, who immediately took his side. They admired the high morals expected from a member of the Wardenaz family. The brown-haired boy and his friends, however, were caught off guard, clearly not anticipating such a bold reaction from Lian. Our boy assessed the situation and concluded that everything was now working in his favor. Determined, he decided to approach the students from the Fourth Tower. However, just as Lian started toward them, the brown-haired boy issued a sharp warning to everyone. He cautioned them against getting close to anyone from the Wardenaz house, claiming it was a dangerous family. The boy went further, warning them not even to make eye contact with members of the Wardenaz family, as it was rumored that their patriarch was a dragon and that they carried the bloodline of an ancient serpent. Lian was taken aback by this dramatic reaction. Turning to Yoner, he asked with genuine curiosity, "Do I really look that scary?" Yoner chuckled softly and replied, "Not scary, but you exude the dignity of a noble. There's no doubt you belong to one of the great houses." What Yoner said made sense, but Lian hadn't realized the extent of his family's notoriety until now. As the conversation continued, Gainando suddenly appeared, seemingly out of nowhere. "Why did you two leave the Imperial Prince alone?" he asked, clearly offended. Yoner quickly apologized, attempting to placate him, while Lian, unbothered by Gainando's complaints, turned back to Yoner. "By the way," he said, "I'd still like to hear the rest of what you were saying earlier, about why you let Gainando act so childishly." Yoner responded that her behavior toward Gainando was due to Gainando's mother, which piqued Lian's curiosity. He questioned Yoner further, asking if she had some sort of encounter with Gainando's mother, the queen, that left her indebted to her. Lian couldn't help but imagine a dramatic scenario where Yoner had spilled juice on the queen's dress while running through the hallway, despite being told repeatedly not to run. In his imagined story, everyone assumed the good days of House Mage were over because Yoner had ruined one of the queen's most expensive dresses. He pictured a terrified Yoner, only to be surprised when the queen gently lifted her up, forgave her mistake, and asked if she was okay. However, Yoner quickly dashed Lian's fanciful story. "There was no such thing," she said flatly. "The only reason I'm acting friendly with Gainando is because the queen gave me an allowance to do so." Lian, disappointed that his imagined tale had been crushed, looked visibly let down. Yoner, noticing his reaction, added, "And it's not a small amount either. The allowance is pretty generous, so I figured I might as well act like his friend." This made Lian conclude that he, too, should be friends with Gainando. The scene then shifted to a massive open ground where all the freshmen had gathered. They stood in awe at the sheer vastness of the area, which included a lake, a forest, and mountains. Our boy realized that the headmaster wasn't exaggerating when he said they'd have to obtain everything on their own. As Lian pondered this, he noticed a group of students, seemingly from the Tower of the Blue Dragon, looking confused and disoriented, as though they'd lost their way. Curious, he turned to Yoner and asked why they were standing around aimlessly. Yoner pointed toward a particular direction and explained that their dorm was supposed to be there. Lian followed her gesture and turned to look at the place she indicated. What he saw left him utterly shocked. Lian, along with the other students, was stunned to see a pathetic-looking building that clearly couldn't accommodate them all comfortably. Gainando, however, was outraged. He couldn't believe the academy expected them to live in such a place, complaining that even his servants' quarters were far better. Lian also thought the building seemed like a tight fit for so many people, but he refrained from voicing his displeasure. As he entered the building with Yoner and Gainando, who continued grumbling about the academy, Lian suddenly experienced a peculiar sensation. A strange magic enveloped him, isolating him from the rest of the students. To his shock, everyone around him had seemingly vanished. While pondering what might have happened to Yoner and Gainando, a voice echoed through the air, addressing him as small magician. The voice asked Lian where he would like to go. Recognizing the nature of the situation, Lian quickly deduced that the dorm was actually a magic tower, something befitting a prestigious magic academy. Instead of answering the question directly, our boy asked the voice where he could go. The voice, impressed by Lian's quick adaptation to the situation, praised him. The voice told Lian that the only places he could currently access were his personal room and the iron break room, a common area exclusive to first-year students. Hearing this, Lian had a realization and asked if there were other locations he might gain access to in the future. The voice confirmed his suspicion, explaining that some areas could be accessed by simply knowing their names, while others required additional knowledge or conditions. However, it also informed him that those places couldn't be revealed at the moment, as per the headmaster's strict orders. Lian couldn't help but think that the headmaster was enforcing rules unnecessarily, reminding him of his old school and his previous life. Shaking off his annoyance, he instructed the voice to take him to his personal room. The voice warmly welcomed him to Einrogard and transported him there. The scene then shifted to Lian's room, where he was reading the instruction manual for Einrogard Academy. As he flipped through its pages, he discovered an interesting detail. Aside from the core subjects, students had the freedom to choose their remaining classes. What intrigued him most was that students could attend various classes for a trial period of 1 month before making their final selections. Moreover, our boy learns that the headmaster's name is Osu Gonadaltz. After reading the entire instruction manual, Lian realizes that the academy's system is not as strict as he had initially feared. In fact, he finds it much easier than the rigorous grad school he attended in his previous life. He also notices that his room is equipped with almost everything he might need, a stark contrast to the sentiments of many other students, who feel their rooms fall far short of their lofty expectations. Having read and thoroughly understood the rules, Lian decides to explore what classes other students are signing up for. He heads to the iron break room, as mentioned earlier by the mysterious voice. Upon arrival, he asks Yoner about the subjects she plans to take. She excitedly responds that she wants to study alchemy, as she has always been fascinated by it. Yoner shares her dream of setting up her own workshop someday and supplying high-quality products to the imperial family. Lian, ever pragmatic, tells her that alchemy is indeed a profitable field. Hearing this, Yoner jokingly asks if Lian would be willing to work for her when she establishes her workshop. Lian responds to Yoner, saying that alchemy is not as straightforward a business as it seems and politely requests some time to think about her proposal. He recalls that the Empire's alchemy industry is highly competitive, rife with unethical practices such as spreading false rumors about competitors, monopolizing potion ingredients, and even sparking guild conflicts over market shares. With this in mind, our boy concludes that pursuing a stable field might be the best option for him. Yoner then asks Lian about the subjects he is considering. This sends him into deep thought. Lian believes it would be wise to select subjects that are less competitive and relatively easy to earn high grades in, as his primary goal is to become an imperial officer or government worker. In such fields, grades and qualifications matter far more than the specific area of expertise. However, Lian feels that sharing such a pragmatic approach with someone as passionate as Yoner might dampen her enthusiasm. Instead, our boy tells her that he plans to explore a variety of subjects over the next month before making a final decision, as one should never rush into important choices. As they discuss their fields of interest, Gainando bursts into the break room, announcing that there's a problem. He suspects there was a thief in his room, as it is completely empty. Both Lian and Yoner exchange bewildered glances, unsure of how to respond to him. A day passes, and all of the students leave their rooms to explore different classes. Leon, meanwhile, can be seen reading a book on basic magic comprehension, which is a core subject for first years. The lecture times for this class vary depending on the dorm. While reading, Leon notices that some students seem off, so he asks what's wrong. Yoner explains that they're hungry, the beds in their rooms are so uncomfortable that they couldn't sleep well, and the prickly clothes are absolutely unbearable. Leon listens to Yoner's complaints about the dorm rooms and wonders if it's really as bad as she says. To him, the conditions are miles better compared to his past life, where he didn't even have scheduled meal times. Leon recalls that, in his past life, his only source of food for the day was energy bars, and at night, he had to survive on cup ramen and a triangle kimbap. Leon and the other students arrive at the lecture hall, still venting about the poor living conditions in the dorms. However, when they open the door, they are shocked to find a troll inside. Trolls are ferocious and dangerous monsters feared by even the most sheltered nobles, but everyone is taken aback when they see a troll in the lecture hall, dressed appropriately and welcoming the students to enter. The lecturer introduces herself as Garcia Kim and explains that she is half-troll. She understands why everyone might be afraid of her but reassures them that there is no reason to be scared. She doesn't hurt people, though, she adds, that's only true unless she gets very angry. Garcia makes a very intimidating face as she says this, which scares everyone in the room. Garcia quickly clarifies that it was a joke. However, after seeing the gloomy and frightened expressions on the students' faces, she regrets making such a remark. Despite this, she proceeds with her lecture. Garcia conjures a spell in her hand, causing it to glow, and explains that most of the students present have likely never used magic before. This is due to the extremely dangerous nature of magic, which is why only adults are typically allowed to wield it. However, things are different for everyone here, as they are the magician seeds who have earned the title of Steel. Garcia informs them that this lecture will not only teach them about magic, but also help them discover the type of magic they have an aptitude for. She then warns them about the dangers of magic. Garcia explains the rigor and challenges of the journey they will face as magicians, telling them that she hopes to become their compass through this difficult path. Everyone is amazed by Garcia's lecture and feels relieved to learn that not all professors at Einrogard are like the headmaster, OSU Gonaldates. Garcia decides to begin with the basics and asks the class what they know about magic. Aidenart responds, saying that it is the responsibility of a magician to change the world with their will. Garcia praises her answer, adding that magic is the use of one's magical energy as the fundamental force to alter the world. She explains that everyone enrolled in this academy is talented enough to sense and recognize this magic energy. However, to truly wield magic, one must go beyond just recognizing it. Garcia goes on to say that to use magic, a magician must call upon their magic energy with their will and delicately weave it together. This process will eventually allow them to cast magic. She then clarifies that while many believe magic requires a chant or specific motions, it is not always the case. What is truly important is one's own will, and Garcia emphasizes this point so that the students never forget it. Realizing she has been talking for a while, Garcia decides it's time to try magic with the class. She instructs everyone to stand up and gather their magic energy. Leon, now nervous that they are about to use magic, starts waving his wand to gather the energy. Meanwhile, Garcia tells the class that they should form an image of light in their minds while gathering their magic energy. Yoner, doing her best, finds it difficult at first. However, she eventually learns how to control the magic energy. She likens it to pulling on the reins of a wildly charging horse. She realizes that if she loses her concentration, the magic energy will disperse, just like the wild horse would run free. As the students focus intently, trying to prevent the magic energy from dispersing, Garcia announces that they will chant their spell together. Garcia begins chanting her lightning spell, which illuminates the entire room, briefly flashing in front of some students. Garcia then tells the students that the chant for the magic spell can be whatever they wish. However, she advises them that a short chant might be easier for retaining focus while concentrating magical energy. Leon, who has been listening attentively to Garcia's explanation, begins to understand the process of using magic. He realizes that first, one must gather magic energy, then transform it with one's will, and finally, chant a spell to unleash the magic. However, Leon also understands that knowing how it works does not mean he can immediately cast magic. Leon attempts to follow the steps he grasped from Garcia's lecture, along with the other students. Meanwhile, Gainandon, on the other hand, messes it up to the point where his magic spirals out of control. Before it can harm anyone, Garcia intervenes to cancel Gainandon's magic, warning the class that if they fail to control their magic, it could become dangerous. However, since it is the professor's responsibility to prevent such accidents, Garcia allows the students to continue practicing and to try again if they have any magic energy left. Many students attempted again, but none of them is able to cast magic. 1/3 of the students simply gave up trying, while the rest continued to make another attempt. Garcia, amused by their persistence despite the lack of success, thought it would take at least a month of practice for them to learn this spell, even though it was classified as one of the simplest. She encouraged them to try again, but none of the students succeeded. This time, half of the class gave up. The students made a 4th attempt, but when they saw no results, the majority of them quit, leaving only 3 students still trying. After the 5th attempt, only 1 student remained, still giving his best effort to cast the spell. Despite trying 7 times, Leon was unable to perform the magic. Realizing that everyone except him had stopped trying, Leon asked Garcia if he should continue, even though he was the last one still attempting. Garcia realized that Leon was on his 7th attempt, which surprised her, as most freshmen typically reach their limit by the 5th attempt, even if they possess a lot of magic energy. The magic energy Garcia had mentioned earlier has several names. In the East, a certain tribe refers to it as ki, while a scholar who likes to show off might call it ether, and some stubborn priests call it divine energy. This power, with its many names, is the source of a magician's strength. Young novice magicians often face a problem known as magic energy deficiency when practicing magic because each time a spell is cast, the magician uses their available magic energy. However, Garcia could hardly believe her eyes when she saw that Leon's complexion didn't change at all, despite it being his 7th attempt. Impressed by his resilience, Garcia asked for his name. Leon introduced himself simply by his name, omitting his house, which earned him favor with Professor Garcia, who appreciated seeing a student practice equality. She instructed Leon to step forward and extend his hand, which she took to assess his magic energy. The moment Garcia made contact, she felt as though she was being engulfed and submerged in a vast, bottomless ocean. She felt herself being continuously drawn deeper into the ocean, unable to escape. Garcia realizes that someone is calling her, which causes her to suddenly wake up. She discovers that she lost consciousness when she grabbed Leon's hand. Leon asks if there's an issue, to which she responds that everything is fine, and they should now turn their attention to the lecture. Gainandon, who had been observing the interaction, whispers to Yoner that they should try to save Leon. Yoner, unimpressed, calls Gainandon an idiot and tells him to be quiet for a moment. Meanwhile, Garcia tells Leon to see her after the lecture ends, which surprises him, but he has no choice but to comply. Garcia then refocuses the class, advising them not to be discouraged by how quickly they run out of magical energy. She instructs them to continue practicing, as the amount of magic energy they possess will increase the more they practice, and they will use less energy with each attempt. Garcia also cautions that too much motivation can cause students to lose control while practicing. As a result, they risk injuring themselves. Garcia specifically points to Gainandon, who messed up last time. With that, Garcia concludes the lecture, and everyone prepares for their next class, while Leon heads to meet Garcia in her office. The scene shifts to Garcia's office, where Leon arrives, curious about why she called him out separately. He asks her about it, and Garcia responds that she did so because she had already heard about him prior to their lecture from the records. Leon is shocked when he hears that Garcia learned about him through the eccentric lich, OSU. However, noticing Leon's concern upon hearing OSU's name, Garcia reassures him not to worry. She explains that, although OSU may seem a little unhinged, he is actually a kind person. The students are unaware of this, but the headmaster has a keen eye for people. Every year, he provides the professors with information about the new students. As always, OSU warned the professors to be extremely cautious with the Beast Man, as he is capable of burning down the entire dorm multiple times over. OSU also advised them to avoid using holy magic near a student who is a half-demon. As for Leon, OSU told the professors that he has the qualities of a massive fool and instructed them to take that at face value. Garcia recalls a saying from the East: "What may seem greatly foolish might be connected to great wisdom." This suggests that a massive fool could also be a massive genius. Garcia realizes that Headmaster OSU sees in Leon the potential for someone who will achieve great success. This makes Garcia wonder what kind of student Leon truly is. Realizing she cannot share the headmaster's comments with him, Garcia tells Leon that he was called to the office because he possesses an unusually high amount of magical energy. Leon feels relieved that it is nothing serious and wonders whether this was really something that required a private meeting. He thinks that it doesn't matter, as everyone can increase the limits of their magical energy. However, he is shocked when Garcia tells him that she cannot even fathom the limits of his magical energy. The amount of magical energy one possesses is a key determining factor in a magician's potential. If a magician lacks sufficient energy, they must rely on complicated methods to draw out more. On the other hand, having abundant magical energy means a magician is free from such restrictions, which signifies a great talent in the field of magic. Leon feels happy upon hearing this, as it suggests a promising future for him. However, he is confused when Garcia remarks that it is a shame that he has so much magical energy. Our boy asks Professor Garcia if having a lot of magical energy is not a good thing. Garcia replies that while having magical energy is beneficial, Leon's case is different. He has too much of it. To explain, Garcia uses an analogy, comparing magical energy to water in a glass. A small amount, like the water in the glass she is holding, is manageable and easy to control. However, controlling an amount as vast as an ocean is an entirely different challenge, even for the most skilled magicians. Leon listens to this explanation and realizes that the difficulty of controlling magical energy, an essential skill for performing magic, would be unreasonably high for someone with his level of energy. He is shocked at the thought that this might hinder his progress on the path of magic. Seeing his concern, Garcia offers him a bracelet designed to absorb excess magical energy, explaining that it will help mitigate the issue. Leon thanks Garcia for the bracelet and asks if wearing it solves the problem entirely. Garcia shakes her head, explaining that if the solution were that simple, she wouldn't have called him to her office. Resigned to his predicament, Leon asks Garcia if she has any further advice for him. Garcia responds that the bracelet will help Leon manage his magical energy if he uses many spells to deplete it. She also tells our boy that he is allowed to practice independently, as there would be no risk of accidents due to magic energy depletion in his case. Grateful for the allowance, Leon thanks Garcia, though he doesn't believe he needs such special privileges. After leaving Garcia's office, Leon joins Yoner and Gaynandon, his mind preoccupied with concerns about his future, which now seems uncertain. Determined to stay on top of his grades, he begins to wonder if he should focus on classes where magic is less central to success. Curious, he asks Yoner and Gaynandon if they have any classes in mind. Yoner enthusiastically replies that she plans to take alchemy classes and invites them to join her. To Leon's surprise, Gaynandon dismissively responds that alchemy is a subject meant for servants. His blunt comment shocks Leon, but Gaynandon continues, claiming that Yoner is foolish for considering alchemy, as it has no proper principles to learn. Yoner, who had been quietly listening to Gaynandon's nonsense about alchemy, seems unimpressed. Yoner clenches her fist tightly, tells our boy to step aside, and delivers a heavy punch that sends Gaynandon flying down the stairs. She warns him not to ask for a potion if he ends up in the hospital. Leon, who had picked up a thing or two about combat during his sword lessons, notes that Yoner's punch was flawless, executed with precision down to the smallest detail. After thoroughly dealing with Gaynandon, Yoner proceeds to attend the basic alchemic comprehension class with our boy. However, Leon, still concerned, asks her if hitting Gaynandon that hard was really okay. Yoner casually replies that it's fine as long as she apologizes tomorrow. This response leads Leon to conclude that this probably wasn't the first time Yoner had hit Gaynandon. As they walk toward the classroom, Yoner notices a large number of students from other towers, while Leon realizes that many of them belong to the Tower of the Black Turtle. Although he doesn't mind if students from the fourth tower are attending the same class, their persistent gazes toward him make him feel uneasy. Peasants typically react to encountering a noble in one of two ways. They either fear them, avoiding entanglement at all costs, something Leon observed just yesterday, or they show open hostility. As Leon listens to someone mutter about how even the warden's house holds no power within the academy, he realizes that trying to act overly friendly with them might backfire. Deciding it's best to let things progress naturally, he opts to keep a low profile. Students enrolled in the basic alchemic comprehension class gather outside on the academy grounds, waiting for their professor. Leon, after encountering a lich headmaster and a half-troll professor, muses that it wouldn't be surprising if their new professor turned out to be equally strange. However, his expectations are quickly overturned when their professor arrives, a completely normal-looking dwarf. The dwarf introduces himself as Yurgolm Jumdar, instructing the students to simply call him Professor Yurgolm. Professor Yurgolm addresses the students, acknowledging that they must be wondering why they are gathered in an open field with not a single desk in sight, despite the grandeur of the Einrogard Academy building. Aidenart confidently raises her hand and suggests that they are gathered outside to connect with nature's mana, as understanding the powers within nature is crucial for alchemists. However, Yurgolm shakes his head and tells her she is wrong. Meanwhile, Yoner turns to Leon and asks if he knows the answer. Our boy hesitates before suggesting that perhaps they are in the forest because it is a good place to gather materials. Yurgolm, overhearing Leon's response, commends him for his accurate guess and praises him as quite the smart ironhead. Aidenart, visibly irritated by Leon's correct answer, seems to grow competitive. Leon, however, silently hopes that this doesn't lead to a rivalry, especially since his answer was merely a lucky guess. Yurgolm then gathers the class's attention, explaining that the true reason they are assembled in this forest is to learn the most essential foundation of alchemy. Professor Yurgolm addresses the class with confidence, stating that many of them likely believe the most important aspects of alchemy are exceptional intelligence and precise magic control. However, he reveals that this assumption is far from the truth. The most crucial skill for an alchemist, Yurgolm explains, is the ability to gather materials effectively. Yoner, who had been attentively listening to the lecture and diligently taking notes, is taken aback by this revelation. She finds it surprising that material collection holds greater importance than intelligence or precise control over magic. Aidenart, however, raises an objection, stating that alchemists can cultivate their own materials or request them from others. She argues that calling material gathering the most important skill in alchemy is a strange assertion. Many students agree with the imperial princess, finding it odd that they, as aspiring alchemists, should prioritize acquiring materials themselves. Hearing this, Yurgolm's temper flares. He scolds the class, calling them ironheads and accusing them of lacking any understanding of the real world. He explains that alchemists can only cultivate less than 10% of the materials they need, and the purchased ones are often of poor quality. He adds that alchemists rely on adventurers because they themselves are terrible at properly gathering herbs, often doing a rushed and careless job when digging up valuable resources. After calming down, Yurgolm emphasizes that every alchemist must learn how to acquire their own materials. Professor Yurgolm firmly explains that without the ability to gather their own materials, no one can become a great alchemist. Believing his explanation to be sufficient, he hands each student a piece of paper with an illustration of a specific material. Yurgolm then announces that they will now move to practical work, instructing the students to find and bring back the material depicted on their paper. Einrogard Academy, despite its prestige, has its share of unsettling rumors. One such rumor claims that students have died while learning magic within its grounds, a fact that Leon acknowledges, as magic is inherently dangerous and prone to accidents. However, sending freshmen into the depths of the forest to gather materials seems reckless and poorly planned. The material Yurgolm has tasked them with finding is corrupted grass, a plant commonly used to make antidotes. Curious about the task, Leon asks Yoner if she has any prior experience with corrupted grass. Yoner confidently replies that she worked with it before enrolling at the academy, which makes the assignment considerably easier for them. However, Leon believes it would be dangerous for just the two of them to venture into the forest. Yoner agrees, suggesting that they need at least 3 people, and asking if there is anyone else from their tower they could team up with. Leon considers asking the Imperial Princess, but Yoner quickly points out that Adenard is quite strict and asks if Leon doesn't find her difficult to work with. Leon responds that it wouldn't matter much since their task is only to gather herbs. However, Yoner informs him that they are too late. Adenard has already finished forming her team. When Leon glances at Adenard's team, he feels a pang of disappointment upon noticing members of the Tower of the Black Turtle among them. He grows sad, believing that Adenard intentionally avoided teaming up with them. Yoner, noticing his reaction, reassures him, saying it shouldn't come as a surprise. She explains that the Imperial Highness was famous even before enrolling at the Academy. Adenard is renowned for her exceptional intelligence and talent, earning recognition even among other members of the Imperial family. With her star power and widespread public admiration, it's no wonder people gravitate toward her, regardless of their status. Leon asks Yoner whether Gainando had any reputation similar to Adenard's, to which Yoner responds that the Imperial Prince never had anything like that. As they continue talking about Adenard, Leon realizes that the students who have already formed their teams have left, leaving only students from the Tower of the Black Turtle behind. Leon thinks about teaming up with the students from the Tower of the Black Turtle, even though they dislike him. It's simply too dangerous for him and Yoner to explore the forest alone, and they need someone who can cover their weaknesses. As Leon considers this, his attention is drawn to a familiar insignia. Recognizing it immediately, he realizes he has found the person he was looking for. Leon's eyes fall on Nilia, a dark elf from the Tower of the Black Turtle. Nilia is a member of the Shadow Patrol, an elite group of skilled hunters and scouts active in the northern mountain ranges of the Empire. The Shadow Patrol is renowned for their expertise in navigating treacherous terrains and their intimate knowledge of the northern wilderness. Nilia, however, on the other hand, Nilia thinks that the task this time is far from difficult. Even though it is her first time hearing about the corrupted grass, she believes it will be easy to find, as the forest is essentially her playground. Nilia is surprised to see so many skilled freshmen, but now the tables have turned. It is her stage to shine. As Nilia decides to begin her search, she is approached by Yoner and Leon, who introduce themselves. Nilia quickly notices that Yoner is a noble, but she does not recognize Leon. She asks them if they want anything from her, to which Yoner asks if she would like to traverse the mountain with them. Nilia's guard goes up at this suggestion, and she immediately questions their true intentions. She believes all nobles are the same, often insulting them by calling them savages. Nilia does not trust nobles, as they may show the best hospitality, yet they still complain about the way elves treat them. She doesn't think Yoner and Leon will be any different from the rest of their kind. As she recalls the horrible things nobles have done to her kin, Leon tells Nilia that it would be dangerous to go into the forest alone. So he asks if she has a plan to deal with the monsters that randomly appear in the forest and mountains. Nilia responds that she does not need anyone's help. However, Leon does not understand why she insists on going alone and asks if she is worried that they might use her as bait or abandon her. Nilia is shocked by this, wondering how Leon was able to discern the true intention behind her refusal. She wants to explain that she just prefers to go by herself, but before she can speak, Leon interrupts her and bluntly tells her that he finds the idea of going into the forest alone to be idiotic. Leon believes that going into the forest for such a task is impossible without assistance. Not only does one have to navigate the dangers of the forest, but they also need to gather and transport materials while fending off monsters that appear out of nowhere. Leon is convinced that Nilia is not foolish enough to think she can handle everything alone, from finding materials to collecting them without any help. Nilia becomes embarrassed, realizing that she was about to be labeled as an idiot. She tells Leon that she will join their team and search for the corrupted grass with them. Leon is pleased with her response and suggests they begin searching for the grass. On the other hand, Yoner is intimidated by how Leon skillfully used words to persuade Nilia and wonders about the things they teach at Wardenaz's house. The scene shifts to Nilia effortlessly leaping and darting through the forest, which surprises both Yoner and Leon. Yoner realizes that Nilia is an experienced hunter and becomes curious about how Leon figured this out, so she asks him. Leon explains that Nilia's well-developed leg and calf muscles, along with the calluses on her palms, indicate that she often uses a bow, traits commonly found in experienced hunters. Nilia, who is eavesdropping from a tree, is surprised to learn that Lian was able to deduce so much about her with so few clues. Nilia realizes that Lian has a strange aura about him, as if he can read people with ease. However, she is shocked when Lian tells Yoner that everything she said about Nilia was a joke, and that he knew Nilia was a hunter because of the shadow insignia on her waist. The shock is so great that it causes Nilia to slip, while Lian, on the other hand, starts laughing and asks Nilia if she had been listening to their conversation. Nilia shakes her head in response. Yoner then suggests that they should start moving and requests that Nilia match her pace with theirs. However, Nilia doesn't understand why she needs to do that. So Yoner explains that she is the only one who can differentiate and find the herb. This means that if Yoner were to collapse, Nilia and Lian would need to find the herb on their own. Nilia realizes that Lian's reasoning is sound and remains silent. Still, Nilia is unsure of Lian's role, so she asks him about it. Before Lian can respond, Nilia interrupts, saying that she is the guide and that Yoner can find the herb, leaving Lian with nothing to do. Lian thinks that Nilia will get upset if he tells her she is taking a free ride, so instead, he says that her role is to protect both Yoner and Nilia. Nilia notices that Lian is well-built and assumes that he must be from a house of knights. However, she doesn't understand why he is living in the Blue Tower, so she asks him to explain. Lian responds that he is not from a house of knights, but rather from House Wardenaz, thinking that this is finally his chance to get closer to Nilia. Nilia gets scared when she hears that the reason Lian is living in the Blue Tower is because he is from the House of Wardenaz. However, she gathers her courage and tells Lian that even though he is Wardenaz's family, he should not act special. But Lian does not understand why Nilia's behavior changed with the mere mention of his house, so he asks Yoner about it, to which she responds that it is normal for there to be crazy rumors of famous noble families to begin with, but Wardenaz beats the rest of the noble families when it comes to rumors, as it has some really crazy ones. Our boy has no idea what kind of rumors Yoner is talking about, so he asks Yoner about it, to which Yoner responds that the most famous rumor is that the patriarch of the Wardenaz family is a dragon, and he burned all of the undead with his breath during the Undead Frenzy incident. Moreover, the bloodline of the Wardenaz family has made contracts with the ancient spirits due to which they are talented in magic. But because of making contracts with the ancient spirits, they have lost their emotions in the process. The other rumor about Wardenaz family is that it is merciless, and the reason for that rumor was a Wardenaz mage that appeared during a riot and decimated the whole city without showing any shred of mercy to anyone. Lian finds these rumors crazy and comments that it is like an image of a monster that destroys everything whenever anything happens. However, our boy adds that if a huge incident happens, then grand mages have to naturally appear, so he does not understand the reason as to why the Wardenaz family is the only one with these crazy rumors. Yoner responds that this is exactly the reason there is no need for Lian to be too bothered by them. Nilia, who was listening to and observing Lian for some time, thinks that even though she does not know about the validity of other rumors, the Wardenaz family being emotionless has to be fake. Nilia tells Lian that he should stop whining and instead they should continue their search of the corrupted grass Professor Yurgolm has tasked them to find. Nilia continues to efficiently jump from one tree to another when she tells Yoner and Lian to wait, stating that she has noticed large footprints of something, indicating that a creature has passed by this location, and, based on the shallowness of the footprints, the creature was attempting to leave no traces. Nilia continues that the creature must be well trained, so she is naturally curious to find out what it could be. But after observing Yoner's reaction, which looks like she is not interested but is trying her best to respond as positively as possible, Nilia realizes that she went rambling by herself again, and she thinks that by now she should be getting used to this, as she doubts that anyone who lives outside of the village would be interested in things like that. However, she gets amazed when she hears that Lian is interested in finding out more about the creature. Our boy finds it quite interesting, so he asks Nilia to tell him more about it, which surprises Nilia as she did not expect that Lian would be interested in such things even though he is from a huge family, and this is all about wilderness. However, Nilia decides to stop acting weird and tells our boy that he should be careful when he spots things like that, because not only does it have huge footprints, it is also hard to guess what might appear in this place, as Nilia has heard that all sorts of monsters lurk within the Magic Academy. Yoner mentions that she has also heard about something similar, and the reason for that is the fact that Einrogard is a land filled with mana, which means that it is inevitable that it causes a lot of monsters to appear here. Yoner further mentions that Einrogard also has monsters made from experiments or rare slimes that were created from magic potions that were thrown away. Our boy feels frightened after listening to this because he thinks that this is not safe. However, Nilia tells them that they should not stop and instead change their plan and follow these tracks of creatures, because only then can they reduce the chances of being ambushed by them. Our boy, on the other hand, is interested in learning about how to read the footprints of the creature, so he asks Nilia to teach him, which further surprises Nilia. However, Nilia warns our boy that it would be so difficult that Lian would give up halfway learning it. Lian responds that if Nilia teaches him, then he will do his best to learn it all the way, to which Nilia responds that she is interested in seeing Lian try it. After that, they continue their search for the corrupted grass, and they somehow get their hands on it with the hello of Yoner. However, they were only able to find 2 of them, so Yoner tells them that she is certain that they will find the rest soon if they keep up with their search. Yoner tells them that they should look elsewhere as she cannot see any more corrupted grass in this place. However, Yoner gets confused when she does not hear a response from Nilia and Lian, so she asks them if there is any problem. Yoner realizes that Nilia and Lian are looking in front of them, so she does the same and gets shocked to find a wild boar right in front of them. Lian concludes that it is not a normal boar since it can detect mana, while Nilia warns everyone to be careful because the thing in front of them is basically a monster. Lian decides to use his magic staff since he does not have any other weapons right now, and they cannot fight a monster boar barehanded. The magic staff is a good weapon considering how the size of the magic staff can change based on what the user wants. Nilia sees our boy take out a magic staff and gets hopeful because our boy is from a famous mage family of Wardenaz, which is the Grand Mage family of the Empire, which means that Lian might have learned a magic or 2 before even joining the academy. Despite that, Nilia asks Lian if he is confident, to which our boy responds that he might be able to pull it off, on which Nilia tells Lian that if he fails to defeat the wild boar, then Lian should just focus on carrying Yoner and run for their lives, while she will lure the boar away from them. Yoner is amazed to see that Nilia is going to such drastic lengths, to which Nilia responds that she is doing this only because she is capable of pulling it off. Lian thanks Nilia for her willingness to sacrifice herself for them, and tells her that he would be counting on Nilia if he fails to defeat the monster boar, while Nilia, on the other hand, is curious to see the kind of magic Lian will use to defeat the boar. Lian takes his stance to deal with the boar and remembers what Arlalong told him about being able to control multiple weapons so that one can stand tall in any kind of bizarre situation one faces. Arlalong told our boy that even though swords are the king of weapons, one must know how to control more than just swords, because only those who go through that process and gain enlightenment will be able to condense their mana into a weapon, which is the level of aura. Arlalong told Lian about the level of aura despite knowing that our boy will get disappointed when he finds the truth, because only very few blessed individuals are able to ever reach that level. However, little did Arlalong knew that Lian never wanted to learn aura, as he only wished to become a mage to live his life out in an imperial office. Lian, making sure to not disappoint Arlalong by telling him that he does not want to reach the level of aura, tells Arlalong that he thinks that it is meaningful for him to train his own body to protect it himself. Arlalong is amazed by our boy's goal, realizing that he is indeed different from the rest of the noble's children who only dream about disillusioned dreams, and tells our boy that he will definitely bring him to the level of an aura user, instructing Lian that from now on he will be doing an additional 100 repetitions of swings, which ends up shocking Lian, because he was not expecting this. Those additional repetitions of swings definitely paid off, as Lian used his skills and swings to deal with the monster boar that was charging at him. Lian was able to knock the bear out. However, both Yoner and Nilia receive a great shock when they see that Lian take down the boar with a magic staff, even though he should have used magic. The staff of Einrogard Academy is so sturdy that it can be used in physical fights. However, despite its sturdiness, it is still impossible to use it to defeat a boar that has become a monster, But the only reason that was possible was because Lian used mana subconsciously, and even though it is far from being at the level of using aura, it was still a change that occurred for him to survive in this place. Nilia checks the monster boar with the staff to make sure it is really dead, and after examining it for a bit, she assures Lian that he has successfully killed the boar, while Yoner, on the other hand, is not able to get up because she cannot believe that the academy has allowed the new students to come into a place like this, which makes Yoner question the way this class is being conducted. As Yoner is complaining about the bizarre way in which this class is being conducted, she, along with her other two teammates, hears a loud scream from a direction, which makes Lian conclude that there is another monster boar, while Yoner realizes that she is not built for this class and should drop it. However, Nilia tells her that she should not do that. All of them rush towards the source of the sound, and as they look down from the cliff they are standing on, they find out that there is a group of students who are standing frozen in front of a monster boar. Our boy suggests that they should observe the students first since they have a lot of people, while Nilia believes that they would not have to even interfere, as those students might be able to take care of it. As they are deciding as to when is the right time to help the students, Yoner realizes that a student, whose name is Ashen Dalkard, comes forward to fight the boar himself. Yoner remembers that Dalkard is a famous family that is known to have the ability to resolve matters with exceptional abilities, and if the Wardenaz family have been the advisor to the Emperor for generations, then the Dalkard family has always been the premier and in charge of finances. Lian also thinks that if Ashen is from the Dalkard family, then he should be trustworthy enough, as Ashen seems like she has learned swordsmanship as well. The scene then shifts to Ashen, who takes her fighting stance, telling that monster boar that she can read all of its movements and the monster boar would not be able to escape from his predictions. Ashen rushes to the right side of the monster boar and attacks its side with all its might. However, his attack was not able to do anything to the monster boar, which makes Ashen realize that his predictions were wrong, because the monster boar sends him flying without wasting any moment. After Ashen gets sent flying by the boar into the oblivion, Imperial Princess Aidenart steps forward to deal with the boar so that she can save her teammates, while Yoner, on the other hand, asks Lian about what they should do now that the princess has stepped forward. However, Lian does not say anything and continues to observe Aidenart, who is making sure to execute her attack perfectly. Aidenart believes she should read the monster boar's breathing and attack it as soon as it charges at her. However, before she can do so, the monster boar lets out a loud scream and falls to the ground. Aidenart gets surprised to see the monster boar getting knocked out before she was able to do anything, only to find out that the boar was defeated by Lian, who approached the boar while riding the headwind as per Nilia's instructions, which enabled our boy to not get noticed by the monster boar. So our boy decides to follow Nilia's advice from now on. Aidenart thanks Lian for saving her and her teammates' lives. However, Lian tells Aidenart that she does not have to worry about it, while Nilia finds it weird that Lian and Aidenart are talking so formally, even though it is normal to talk casually to students that are studying in the same year. Aidenart assures Lian that she will definitely pay him back for his help today, on which our boy asks Lian if he can ask for favor right now, to which Aidenart nods, telling Lian to state his favor, while wondering what kind of favor does a Wardenaz would want from her. Lian requests Aidenart to tell him about the classes where he would easily be able to get good results, as it would be easy for Aidenart since she has a lot of connections. Aidenart gets shocked when she hears that a Wardenaz wants to take a class that gives good results easily and wonders if Lian is testing her. As Aidenart is wondering about how to deal with this situation, both of them hear a loud voice, telling them that they know of such classes and are more knowledgeable about such classes than anyone else. Our boy experiences an ominous feeling, which is akin to a tremble that he has experienced before. Lian remembers that he has faced a similar situation in his previous life in the class where he met his graduate school professor. As Lian is reminiscing about that terrible experience, he realizes that Professor Yurgolm is standing behind him, telling him that the class that gives good results easily is the alchemy class. Our boy gets frightened when he sees Professor Yurgolm standing right behind him and realizes that he needs to calm down, as he is no longer the inexperienced student that he used to be once in his past life. So he tells Professor Yurgolm that it is definitely possible with passion and love. Professor Yurgolm knew that Lian would think like that, So he tells Lian that he will help him get that passion and love that Lian is looking for, which puts Lian in shock because he did not know that it would turn out like this. To make sure that Professor Yurgolm leaves him alone, our boy tells Professor Yurgolm that he still needs to take a look at other classes. The rest of the students who are observing this get jealous that a professor is already after Lian, which is something that can only be expected from someone that is from the House of Wardenas. After that, Professor Yurgolm assesses the situation and decides to end today's class, telling the students that are present there about the other groups, who unfortunately did not run into monster boars because they went to different places. Ashen gets surprised after hearing this and asks Professor Yurgolm if the professor let them run into these boars intentionally, to which Professor Yurgolm responds that he did not only want them to look for them. Rather, the purpose of today's class was to let all of them experience various situations that could happen while they look for herbs. Professor Yurgolm adds that whether it is to kill, dodge, run away, or hide, an alchemist needs to be able to respond to all sorts of situations. Professor Yurgolm makes sure that all of them understand what he was trying to convey to them, but instead of understanding, some of the students are rather angry at the professor. After seeing that the professor is ending the class without asking about the corrupted grass, Yoner asks Professor Yurgolm if he does not need the corrupted grass, despite the fact that his students went through so much to get it. Professor Yurgolm gets shocked when he finds out that Lian and his group were able to find the corrupted grass, which is something he was not expecting from any of them. Professor Yurgolm tells Lian and his group that they passed the test, which means that Lian, Yoner, and Nilia are talented students that are meant to take this class, especially focusing on Lian, telling our boy that he must definitely take this class. Lian realizes that he would not be able to escape his fate, and despite getting a second chance at life, he would have to take the course that he does not like. Our boy realizes that nothing will work on Professor Yurgolm, so he decides to resign to reality and tells Professor Yurgolm that he will do his best to take this class, as learning alchemy was his dream since he was a kid. Professor Yurgolm notices that Lian is definitely matured in certain ways, as normally at his age, he would be rebellious. Professor Yurgolm then tells Lian that since he killed the boar and also obtained the corrupted grass, he would give him a special privilege, and explains to Lian that he has a cabin near the forest, which our boy is allowed to visit this semester. Lian becomes alarmed when he hears this and begins to wonder what kind of chores the professor would assign him. After seeing Lian become scared, Professor Yurgolm apologizes for not clearly explaining what he meant by that, and tells Lian that the thing the new students want the most is food, which Lian may not look forward to at the moment, but will most likely love after a week. Lian realizes that Professor Yurgolm is telling the truth, as it is indeed hard to survive on the food that is provided by the academy, especially since all the children of nobles are in their tower. Professor Yurgolm continues that his cabin is full of fresh ingredients, and there are even spices and vegetables that he himself obtained from the forest. Lian finally realizes that Professor Yurgolm is providing him with a voucher for an unlimited buffet, so our boy happily grabs the hands of the professor and tells him that he always knew that alchemy is the best subject, which also ends up making Professor Yurgolm glad, as he starts to like Lian more and more. The rest of the student who went for searching the corrupted grass join Lian and others and find out that Professor Yurgolm was crazy enough to let loose the boars in the forest. Most of the students decide that they would not come to this class ever again, because they were about to die in the forest, while Lian, on the other hand, is not even surprised anymore after how many bizarre things he has observed so far, and thinks that he should set aside the rations as urgently as he can. The scene then shifts to Lian, who is sitting outside Professor Yurgolm's cabin trying to dismember the boar, and even though he learned how to dismember an animal from Arlalong, he does think that he can dismember this big boar alone. Yoner sees an opportunity to gain Lian's favor and decides to assist him, but our boy asks Yoner if she is okay with this because she does not look well, to which Yoner responds that she is fine, asking Lian if he can give her some meat in exchange for the help. Nilia, who is observing their reluctance in dismembering a boar, asks them if they really going to dismember the boar themselves, even though the nobles have no experience doing things like this. Lian tells Nilia that they are doing this to eat meat, and asks Nilia if she does not want to eat meat. Nilia gets intimidated by their sheer focus and determination and tells them that she will show what a hunter is truly capable of. Lian thinks that it would be possible for Nilia and Yoner to dismember a boar together, as Nilia is a self-proclaimed expert, while Yoner also comes from the family that is familiar with handling of different materials. As Lian is wondering about that, Professor Yurgolm gives them the equipment required for dismembering. Our boy thanks the professor for providing them with equipment and asks Yoner and Nilia if they are ready to dismember the boar, on which Yoner and Nilia grab their equipments and start dismembering the boar. Nilia is amazed to see that Lian is quite good at dismembering and wonders if they teach stuff like that in the Wardenaz family. Lian does not how long this boar meat will last, so he decides to preserve it properly, no matter how tired he really is. Yurgolm is amazed to find out that Lian is smoking the meat, so he praises Lian for doing that and tells him that the meat is bound to decompose eventually, no matter how cool the weather gets. So in that aspect, choosing to smoke the meat is an amazing decision. Lian thanks Professor Yurgolm for the compliment, while Yurgolm, on the other hand, thinks that he was already surprised that Lian came this far within 3 days of starting school, but he was further surprised to find him smoking meat like a professional, which is something Yurgolm was not expecting. As Yurgolm is wondering about how amazing Lian is, his stomach lets out a loud growl, which is heard by everyone present there, so Lian asks if he is hungry, to which Professor Yurgolm responds that he is indeed a little hungry. Lian asks the professor for bread and butter, so that he can prepare something for Yurgolm, to which Professor Yurgolm responds that Lian is trying to get his money's worth. Lian takes his sweet time and presents a delicious dish in front of everyone, which they eat with jam that was gifted to them by Professor Yurgolm. Yoner tells Professor Yurgolm that the jam he gifted them is very delicious, on which Professor Yurgolm tells Yoner to eat as much as she can, as Yoner would not be able to eat it so easily again. Professor Yurgolm also praises the meat that was cooked by Lian, which has a heavenly texture because of the jam Lian used on it, and so with well-cooked meat, sweet jam, and bread with tasty butter, alongside a flowing spring with friends, that all along, everyone was able to enjoy each other's presence along with the food, even though the first 3 days of the school were not easy for any of them. After having a delicious meal, Lian and Yoner are sitting beside the meat that was left after all the smoking, as they are not sure what they should do with these, because both of them are not able to take a single bite. Nilia suggests that they should share it with the other students in their tower. However, Lian and Yoner deliberately give it a different meaning, and Lian asks Nilia if she is also thinking of selling the meat, while Yoner, on the other hand, believes that it is such a good idea, but Nilia mentions that she did not say anything like that. Nilia is shocked that both of them have twisted her words, as they are discussing how easy it would be to sell the meat to most of the students in the Blue Dragon's tower, as they are rich. Yoner mentions that because they are nobles, the students in the Blue Dragon's tower would be embarrassed to take things for free. Our boy and Yoner think that their idea is quite great, so they get very fired up as they cannot wait to execute it, while Nilia, on the other hand, wonders if all nobles think like that. However, Nilia is wrong in her opinion about Lian and Yoner, because Lian is someone who wants to work super hard to earn money and live a good life, while wants to save as much money as possible for the sake of a workshop, which makes both of them unusual. But as of now, Nilia has no way to know all that information. Nilia, still not sure, asks our boy and Yoner if they are really going to sell their smoked meat for money, on which Lian asks Nilia if she also wants to join them, to which Lian responds that Nilia is obviously allowed to do as she wants with her portions, but she might regret that in future. Yoner also agrees with Lian, and tells Nilia that friendships might disappear, but riches always remain. However, does not want to listen to them anymore, so she tells them to be quiet. Professor Yurgolm, who is observing them for quite long, thinks that all of them are passionate and talented students, but apart from that, each and every one of this group of 3 friends looks like a troublemaker, which makes Professor Yurgolm conclude that he will be having many headaches from now on. The scene then shifts to the tower of the arrogant Blue Dragon, which always welcomes the new students with the fresh smell of the forest because of how far it is located from the main grounds. However, today was an exception, because instead of the fresh smell of the forest, students were welcomed by the smell of the roasted meat, which they smelled when they were returning to their rooms. The students were shocked to find out the meat being roasted right in front of them, so they ask Lian and Yoner, who are roasting the meat, about what they are trying to do, to which Lian told them to sit down, telling them that they have got roasted meat ready for everyone. However, it is going to cost 2 silver coins per person. The scene then shifts to the students of the Tower of the Arrogant Blue Dragon, who cannot stop their tears after tasting such delicious roasted meat, as it has been quite some time since they last had meat. The students are not able to control their emotions because they cannot believe they are eating something this good, so they started cheering for Yoner and Leon out of joy. Leon and Yoner, on the other hand, cannot believe that even though they asked for triple what they usually charge from the student, they still managed to sell this much meat. Moreover, there is no other way for the students except buying from them, which makes it a win-win situation for them. As Leon and Yoner are discussing their business, Gainando walks out of the dorm to the place where they were selling roasted meat, starving and curious as to why it is so loud outside. Gainando gets surprised when he sees roasted meat in front of him and is greeted by our boy, who tells him to make haste and eat that roasted meat, which was cooked for him. Gainando cannot believe that he can finally taste roasted meat after such a long time and jumps on the chair to gobble some, thanking Leon for the food. However, before Gainando is even able to take a bite of the roasted meat, Leon stops him, telling Gainando that he has to pay 1 silver coin before he eats that. Gainando gets surprised when he hears that Leon is charging money for food. However, our boy tells Gainando that the only reason they did this is because a noble's pride would not allow people to eat food for free, but Gainando has no way of paying for the food at the moment. To solve this problem, our boy tells Gainando that all Gainando needs to do is designate an amount and sign with his name. Gainando looks at the credit contract and starts crying because he cannot believe how nice Leon is being to him. So Gainando grabs his pen to immediately sign the contract. Gainando realizes that he was right about having an eye for nice people, as because of that he was able to befriend a nice friend like Leon, believing that Leon is his real friend. The scene then shifts to students gathered for a lecture on basic magical personality education. However, nobles believe that they do not need to take a personality class because they are nobles and are already beyond perfection, while our boy, who is listening to them, cannot believe that the students can say all of this unironically. As the nobles are complaining about how useless the lecture will be to them, they suddenly hear a familiar voice greet them, and they soon find out that it is none other than the headmaster OSU, which makes Leon conclude that they will be learning about personality from the Lich headmaster himself. Headmaster OSU notices the faces of the students and realizes that they were finally able to eat something good after taking a whole month to find food. A blue-haired student asks Headmaster OSU if he was really expecting them to find food on their own, and further asks the headmaster as to why all of them have to do something on their own. But before the blue-haired student is even able to finish his question, Headmaster OSU shuts him up, as he does not like pointless talk and praises them for getting used to their lifestyle, despite the fact that their heads are empty. Headmaster OSU realizes that even though they get new students every year, the Tower of the Blue Dragon has always been the slowest amongst all of the towers in getting used to their new lifestyle. To compare this with the Tower of the Blue Dragon, which is composed mostly of nobles, is always slow to get used to things since they have never had to experience hardship, but OSU is impressed to see that the Tower of the Blue Dragon has already gotten used to things. However, OSU also very well knows that this was only possible because of Leon, as OSU always knew that our boy was different from the moment he saw him. But what surprises OSU more is the fact that someone as flexible as Leon came from the stubborn Wardenaz family. Headmaster OSU thinks that flexibility and thinking freely are the traits that are most important for a magician, because of which Headmaster OSU always makes sure that his students are always faced with problems. The blue-haired student then questions Headmaster OSU about the purpose of this class, and instead of answering the question, the headmaster asks the student what he believes the purpose of this class is, to which the blue-haired student responds that he is not sure about the answer. The headmaster, OSU, angrily informs the student that this class was added to the course due to the stupid emperor, who always comes here to force OSU to accept responsibility for the actions of those who have graduated from this institution. Headmaster OSU tells the blue-haired boy that a good number of their seniors have caused problems in the kingdom because of their ruined personality. So if in case someone were to be blamed for issues with their personality, Headmaster OSU can use this class as an excuse to avoid being punished for the actions of the students who graduate from this academy. The students get shocked behind the bizarre reason this class was designed. However, Headmaster OSU makes sure if the students understand everything. Headmaster OSU then tells the students that magicians are an unpredictable group of people in the first place, and the students should not try to deny it by saying that they are different, because statements like that will only anger the headmaster. Headmaster OSU then orders the students to open their book and read page 1 loud and clear. The students quickly open page number 1 and shout that they will not cause harm to ordinary people with their magic. The headmaster tells them to continuously read it louder and louder, on which the whole class starts to chant the first page loudly, while our boy, on the other hand, wonders if something like this will even work. Headmaster OSU finishes the class with that chant and hopes that today's class will help all of the students to develop a kind heart. Headmaster OSU then tells the class that he needs volunteers to help him with the class, on which no one dares to raise his hand. Our boy notices that everyone is looking away, and he himself thinks that being a class volunteer of Headmaster OSU's class sounds troublesome. After seeing that no one is willing to become class volunteer, Headmaster OSU tells them that they would definitely get in trouble if they do not raise their hand. However, the headmaster did not need to do anything because Leon, despite knowing how troublesome it would be, raised his hand, thinking that there might be some hidden benefits to this. Headmaster OSU gets amazed and comments that Leon is doing this to advance in this class quicker than others. However, Leon tells Headmaster OSU that it is an honor for a student to aid a student he respects. Headmaster OSU does not like Leon's attitude, as he hates hearing insincere things, but then decides to let it go because opportunities always seek out the proactive. Gaynandan, who was not expecting Leon to become class volunteer, asks Leon the reason if he is out of his mind, as there is no knowing what the crazy headmaster will do to Leon. However, Gaynando is stopped by one of the students, who tells him that Leon is not crazy. Rather, he is sacrificing himself for the whole class. Gaynando gets shocked by this and thinks that he also needs to step up for his friend's sake. But he is not able to gather the courage to stand up, despite trying his best, and instead of Gaynando, Ashen stands up to become class volunteer along with Leon. Headmaster OSU praises Ashen's family for being proficient in document, which means that Ashen is expected to do a great job. Our boy wonders if Ashen is also aiming for the same hidden benefits. However, he gets proven wrong when Ashen herself tells our boy that she is repaying our boy for his help last time. Our boy tells Ashen that there is no need for her to do that, but Ashen tells him that she cannot help it because the Dalkert family is always clear with the calculations. Headmaster OSU looks at both of them acting jolly and tells them that he is glad to find out that Leon and Ashen are on good terms. But there is something that they need to do right this moment. Headmaster OSU drops some papers at both of them and instructs them to copy all the student safety rules by the next class. The scene then shifts to Ashen, who is burning with the anger he has for Headmaster OSU, as Ashen repeatedly vows to never forgive the headmaster for making them do something this unnecessary when the headmaster can easily take care of copying it in an instant. Our boy, who has been observing Ashen for quite some time, wonders if she is going to faint from the anger. Leon knows why Headmaster OSU asked them to do this and thinks that the headmaster probably wants them to use magic if they are so upset about this task. But Leon and Ashen do not know how to use writing magic because the whole class cannot even use magic as basic as Illuminate. Leon gets up from his chair and wonders that if Headmaster OSU has got even a shred of conscience, then he would have left them a hint somewhere. Ashen sees Leon suddenly stand up, so she asks Leon about what he is trying to do, to which Leon responds that he is looking for a sliver of hope they can use to resolve this situation, and it can be anything that can be useful. Ashen gets frightened and asks Leon if it would be okay for them to do something like that, as it feels exactly like stealing. Our boy responds that they were not told by anyone to not do that. Moreover, this is the lecture hall of the headmaster, which means that they are allowed to do this. Ashen agrees with Leon's idea, as he also believes that stealing is all right once in a while, telling our boy that they should split up to make the search easy. Leon and Ashen start going through the things that are present on Headmaster OSU's desk, and soon realize that there is not anything among Headmaster OSU's belongings that would somehow help them. But as they are about to give up, Leon notices that there is a manna around one of the drawers of the desk. Leon tells Ashen that he has found the manna around the drawer, on which Ashen walks up to the desk and opens the drawer. As they open the drawer, they see Headmaster OSU pop out right in front of them, which scares the life out of them. However, Leon later realizes that it is an illusion magic. The illusion of the headmaster mentions that the fact that they opened this drawer means that they had the thought to cease their foolish labor. The illusion hopes that both of them manage to discover this answer at the earliest possible time, as it would be really pathetic if it took them ages to do it. The illusion then draws their attention towards the first magic circle of basic control that is inside the drawer, telling Leon and Ashen that it is better if they learn it as fast as possible, and after saying this, the illusion of Headmaster OSU vanishes into thin air. Ashen cannot believe that Headmaster OSU did this horrible act to them and gets infuriated, as Ashen does not like the methods Headmaster OSU is using to teach them. Ashen suggests to Leon that they should lodge a complaint to the headmaster, as Ashen believes that Headmaster OSU will listen to their complaint if both of them go together. However, Ashen gets shocked when he finds our boy engrossed in the basic control magic that was inside the drawer. Ashen calls Leon a traitor, on which Leon apologizes, but instead of agreeing with lodging a complaint, Leon tells Ashen to think carefully, as something like a complaint would not work against the crazy headmaster. Ashen thinks for a moment and concludes that Leon is right, as he believes there is a 95% chance that they will fail. However, Leon believes that they would certainly fail. Leon then suggests Ashen that they should quickly practice the first magic circle, which mentions that the most important things to consider when using basic control magic would be one's will, incantation, and one's movements, and the spell can be initiated by telling the object to move. Ashen and Leon, both of them try their best to control the pen using basic control magic, but even after trying to the point their mana depletes, they are unable to move it even an inch. Leon realizes that magic is really difficult to use, and even though it looks like a simple movement on the outside, the mana always gathers differently, which is akin to balancing 2 plates on 2 sticks while riding a one-wheeled bicycle on the rope in the circus. Leon tries to give it one last try with his complete focus, treating it as if it is their last chance, and thinks back to the past deadlines, to the last minute right before his homework was due. Our boy tries to become totally aligned with the tranquility of the bamboo forest, while also being light as a feather, and then tells his pen to move, which finally causes his pen to float in the air. Both Ashen and Leon get surprised to see the pen float in the air after so many tedious tries, after which Leon moves on to the next hurdle, where he has to move the pen, while Ashen, on the other hand, is amazed at Leon and realizes that Wardenaz's family is really something else. Leon starts to move his pen as slowly as he can, but the pen suddenly flies outside the window, which surprises both Ashen and Leon, as they realize that their pen got stuck in a tree after cutting the apple in half. Leon grabs the instructions on basic control magic again and realizes that there are 2 problems that they need to solve with this magic, as they not only have to succeed in completing the spell, but also have to continue to focus so that the object continues to move. However, once one manages to complete the spell, controlling the object is not as hard. Leon initiates the spell and tries to control his pen by slowly concentrating on the pen, but as he is doing that, Headmaster OSU suddenly appears right in front of them and is glad to find that Leon is practicing diligently, so OSU offers to write the rest of the document with his own magic. OSU hopes that Leon and Ashen understand why he asked them to do this, but as Headmaster OSU is talking, Leon loses his control on his pen, which causes the pen to swiftly fly towards the headmaster. Ashen gets shocked after seeing this. However, she finds the idea of a new student targeting the headmaster to be quite cool. However, Leon wishes for Ashen to shut her mouth, while Headmaster OSU, who is targeted by the flying pen, manages to stop it right before it hits him, but instead of being angry, Headmaster OSU is glad that Leon is getting the hang of basic control pretty quickly and praises our boy for doing a good job. Leon is surprised that even after getting targeted by a student, the headmaster is not saying anything about that, which causes Leon to conclude that Headmaster might be in a good mood. So he asks Headmaster OSU for some tips on controlling some objects. Headmaster OSU realizes that Leon is only struggling at controlling the object, even though he can initiate the spell without any difficulty. So he tells Leon that all the new students struggle with controlling the object, so there is no need for Leon to worry. After hearing this, Lian breathes a sigh of relief because he assumed it was due to his magic. However, after seeing Lian in a good mood, Headmaster OSU reveals to Lian that he lied about controlling the object being the most difficult part, as it only takes practicing once or twice to be able to effectively control the object, and people who have difficulty controlling the object are actually a special kind. After that, instead of telling Lian the solution to his problem, Headmaster OSU tells him to figure it out on his own, to which Lian, instead of expressing his anger at being pranked by the headmaster, thanks him and tells him that he will practice more and more until he gets the hang of it. Headmaster OSU realizes that pulling Lian's leg isn't fun, so he turns to Ashen, who he knows will react, and tells both of them that their understanding of magic will grow the more they use it. However, for now they should not worry and have some lunch. After that, Headmaster OSU teleports only Lian to the cafeteria, and instead of making him land on the ground, Headmaster OSU lets him float in the air. Lian realizes that it is the teleportation and securely lands on the ground, which is something Lian was not expecting because Headmaster OSU never uses the teleportation magic when they need it and yet uses it to send them to cafeteria. Lian notices that Ashen was not teleported with him, but he assumes that she would be fine, as Lian has no way of knowing that Ashen was sent to the clinic to heal her magic fatigue. Our boy then looks at the cafeteria and realizes that there is not a single soul here, which is to be expected since it is way past lunchtime. Our boy looks at his share of food and realizes that he would be having 2 rice balls with a loaf of bread like he used to, which is something he cannot change for now. However, he realizes that he still has some smoked meat that he made last time, so he takes it out of his coat and starts eating it. As Lian is enjoying his smoked meat, he is greeted by Aidenart, who seemed to have been looking for Lian. Our boy is surprised to see Aidenart, so he asks what Aidenart is doing here, to which Aidenart responds that she is here to give him the data that Lian asked for last time and grabs Lian a document. Lian thanks Aidenart for compiling him a list of courses to get high grades in, but as he looks at the document, he realizes that it is about the popular lecture topics, instead of courses where Lian can easily get high grades. Lian gets surprised to find out that the basic understanding of the alchemy is at the very top, which is something he does not understand. The rest of the popular courses on the list are on imperial linguistics and ballroom dances, which Lian thinks is still better than nothing, but tells Aidenart that there was a misunderstanding as he asked for courses where Lian would easily be able to get good grades. Aidenart does not understand what Lian is talking about, so he asks Lian to explain himself, to which Lian responds that it is hard to get good scores on popular courses because of the overload of competitors, as compared to unpopular courses, where the lack of competitors make it easier for students to get good scores on. Aidenart gets shocked after she hears Lian's explanation, as she realizes that Lian was actually looking for courses that would get him good grades, which is something Aidenart did not expect from the child of Wardenas, especially after Lian defeated the boar, which gave Aidenart the impression of Lian being a noble. After Aidenart becomes certain that Lian was not testing her, rather he was actually asking for easy courses, she takes out another piece of paper which contains the unpopular lecture topic. Aidenart hands Lian the document and tells him that it is the list of the courses that she took note of while she was working on the list of popular courses. Our boy looks at the document, which contains courses like basic swordsmanship, basic stamina training, and repeated practice of basic magic battle. Lian gets happy after seeing these courses, as he can already tell that people would hate these topics, as there are a limited number of people that would try to learn swordsmanship at magic school. Most of the students would also not like to take a course on repeated practice of basic magic battle, because most people are interested in research, which means that they do not even need a course on fighting. However, our boy does not care about that, because he is very glad that he can learn about more ways to protect himself. Aidenart gets disgusted after seeing Lian get glad over something this useless and leaves him alone in his happiness. The next morning, Lian is walking on his way to attend one of the unpopular lectures. However, he is sad because everyone he requested to join him outright declined, as Gainando did not see the point of taking such a lecture, while Yoner, on the other hand, told Lian that she already has a class at that time. But the most surprised out of them was Ashen, who could not understand the reason Lian is wasting his precious time over these unpopular lectures. Our boy understands the reason everyone declined to take the unpopular course with him, as they have no way of knowing what might happen to them. Because when it comes to schools and professors, there is no such thing as consideration for others, as even though they all know that the student is listening to other lectures, the professors still do not care about others. For that very reason, Leon needs a lecture that he can care less about, so that our boy can focus on lectures that are more important. As Leon reaches the lecture hall for the class of repeated practice of basic magic battle, he gets surprised to find out that it is located in the basement of the building, which is something he does not understand. And although the stairs looked normal, our boy could already tell that something was wrong with the place. There is a saying that anyone would know if they belong to the Empire, which says that one must not recklessly enter the magic tower, even though it might look normal on the outside, because one might not be able to escape once they step inside. This is something Leon read in a fantasy novel when he was little, where the two siblings were finally able to exit the tower after an entire week. Little Leon believed that the fairy tale was exaggerated, as there is no way it would take one a week to escape the tower, so he asked Arlalong about to confirm if it is fake, to which Arlalong responded that it seems a little exaggerated because one can never leave the tower once they go inside, as realistically speaking, one would die. Einrogard could also be considered the final form of the magic tower that is often found in fantasy novels, which is the reason that the students, despite their sheer curiosity, do not even dare to explore Einrogard Academy. Leon is also scared as he stands in front of the stairs that lead to the lecture hall for the course about repeated practice of basic magic battle, assuring himself that everything would be fine since it is school, and there is no way the headmaster would create a school that kills the students. Leon thinks that the dormitories and the first floor of the main building were totally fine, so there is no way for the basement to be spooky. But as our boy decides to enter the building, he gets startled by Headmaster OSU, who appears right behind him out of nowhere and asks our boy if he is entering the first level of the underground. Leon wonders what is the headmaster doing at this place, but realizes that this might turn out to be a good opportunity for him. So our boy tries to butter up Headmaster OSU, telling him that he is very honored to see his esteemed headmaster, and asks Headmaster OSU if he could tell Leon something about Underground Level 1 as he is trying to enter it. Headmaster OSU responds to Leon that he would not tell anything about the Underground Level 1. Leon gets angry by the non-serious behavior of the headmaster, but still manages to put out a smile, because the graduate student is someone who is capable of smiling in front of his teacher despite being full of grudges and loathing. Leon then enters the Underground Level 1 despite not learning anything from the headmaster. And as he walks, while observing the basement, Leon realizes that the basement looks pretty normal, even though Headmaster OSU tried his best to scare Leon. However, as Leon stands in front of the door of the lecture hall of repeated practice of basic magic battle, Leon feels that it is much more ominous than the rest of the basement, to the point that Leon wants to believe that he is mistaken. As Leon stands in front of the ominous door, he notices that the two students other than him are also here to take this class, which makes Leon conclude that there are enough students, contrary to what he thought earlier. However, Leon gets bamboozled when the two students start to walk away from the lecture hall, because they were not supposed to attend this class, but they lost their way. The students cannot believe that they almost set their foot in the wrong class, because no one would even try to take such a class, as even the brave guys in their tower came out all scared. Leon, who is listening to their conversation, feels as if he just got humiliated, but he decides to not ponder over it further and pushes the door of the lecture hall to enter the class. As our boy enters the class, he notices that there are 3 students other than him attending the class, which puts him at ease a little. However, the 2 of these students were not supposed to be here, as they entered the wrong class. As Leon walks to his bench, he wonders about the purpose of the blue ball that is on every desk of the classroom. However, as Leon is wondering about it, the professor tells him that the class is about to start, so everyone should take their seat. Leon gets surprised when he hears a voice from the far corner of the room, as our boy did not even realize that there was another person in the room, and the same goes for the rest of the 3 students, for they were also not aware of the presence of a person other than them. Leon takes a quick look at the person sitting at the corner of the room and finds out that he has pale skin, with gloomy eyes and long canine teeth, which means that their professor this time is a vampire. The professor introduces himself as the Vladi Begrek, informing the students that he is in charge of this class and tells them that he is looking forward to teaching them. Professor Greg also holds the blue ball in his hands and informs the students that the blue ball they see on their desks is made from a spirit star stone, which is an ore that is quite sensitive to mana. Professor Greg then explains that as constellations occupy their spaces, they exude divine power, and spirit star stones change after taking in that power. Professor Greg then instructs the students to get up from their seat and infuse their mana into the blue ball. Leon quickly gets up from his seat and touches the blue ball to infuse his mana in it, wondering if he would be able to pull it off, considering how he failed to use Illuminate, which is a basic magic. As Leon, along with the rest of the students, infuse mana into their balls, the balls suddenly start to float in the air, which shocks Leon, as he cannot believe that he succeeded so easily. Leon thinks that the object they are using is not just a spirit star stone, but rather an artifact, which is quite evident from the markings present on the ball, which makes our boy conclude that Professor Greg made these balls himself. Leon gets amazed at this because he has heard that artifacts sell for a lot of money if they are made really well. As the students are focusing on the task given to them by the professor, a purple-haired girl loses control of her object, which causes it to rapidly fly towards the ceiling, to the point that it looks like it will pierce the ceiling, but as the ball reaches the ceiling, it stops on its own. Professor Greg then explains that the ball is connected to the will of the students, which is the reason they can control it easily. However, he has casted a contract upon the object so that it would not destroy the lecture hall. The purple-haired girl lets out a sigh of relief after hearing this, but as she is calming her nerves down from the recent surprise, her ball which flew into the air comes flying down quickly and hits the purple-haired girl in her stomach, which causes the ball to fall on the ground. Professor Greg continues from his previous explanation that the contract does not apply to the students, which means that the ball can definitely hit them. So Professor Greg advises the students to take extra care to not destroy the ball. The purple-haired girl asks, shouldn't the professors care about the students instead of the object? But Professor Greg ignores her and tells the purple-haired girl to try making the ball float again, while Leon, on the other hand, concludes that this professor is quite strict than the rest of the professors he took classes of. After the students manage to float the ball effectively, Professor Greg instructs them to make a circle, which puts the students at bind, along with our boy, who also finds it quite difficult to control even though it is an artifact, because no matter how much Leon tries, the ball would not move according to his will. A blue-haired student somehow manages to draw a circle, which makes him happy, so he tells Professor Greg about it, on which Professor Greg, instead of praising the blue-haired student, instructs him to do it again, which confuses the student. A good amount of time is spent in drawing the circles, which makes Leon wonder if they would be doing this thing the entire class. So to satisfy his curiosity, our boy asks Professor Greg about when they are allowed to stop drawing circles, to which the professor responds that they can stop when they are able to do it perfectly. The blue-haired student asks Professor Greg if he is allowed to go to the toilet, to which the professor responds that he does not have to ask for permission. The blue-haired student, along with his blonde friend, utilizes this opportunity to bunk this class, as they cannot understand the purpose of drawing circles, while the purple-haired girl sees the two students bunk the class and wishes to do the same, but she suddenly collapses on her desk. Leon, who is sitting beside her, gets surprised to see the purple-haired girl collapse and assumes that she is faking her unconsciousness, wondering if there is even a need to go that far.